All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite Warlock here. And I'd like to bring something to your attention that I think and feel strongly that needs to be said. There's a lot of individuals out there that will guide you into a desolate road. There is those who believe in a corrupted, watered down piousness of false beliefs. Someone once commented underneath a post I did most recently, and he chose a prominent figure, okay, that is most of today's occultists would go by. In fact, they would swear by it, but they didn't really do their homework into Aleister Crowley. Now, if they had done, for an example, done their homework into Aleister Crowley, then they would realize that this man was not a black magician. He hid behind philosophical riddles. He hid behind turning the other cheek, so to speak. When you actually look at how he presented himself, he basically changed the topic when things like ritual or ceremonial evocations and invocations were even brought up. He was not a traditionalist, so to speak, within any given system of magic. In fact, he always picked from here and there and took from other older practitioners, such as Mathers, for an example, or that of, say, the Solomon Keys, the Goetia, even. And what was interesting about this is if you're going to quote a black magician or a supposed black magician, you might have want to have a sound foundation of understanding underneath your belt. This means years of experiments, years of working with a particular system of sorcery. Okay. Now, there are numerous people who have had dealings with with groups like the OTO, the Golden Dawn, the what do they call that? The ATA or the AA groups, stuff like that. And it's interesting to see how most of these groups deal with either alchemical changes, experiments within alchemy, either through psychological or physical changes within their rituals and rites. Many of them studied a particular type of magic, a particular type of pantheon, be it the Goetia or the 72 demons of Solomon, or that of the 72 jinn, maybe even the Orisha, for an example, from Santeria. Okay, when we get into the Golden Dawn traditions, they were highly, and I should say still, I shouldn't say were, I should say, and I'm going to correct myself right here and say that they still are at least those who are true to the Masonry and the Masonic Lodge and all that stuff, is they still are heavily into ceremony. Ceremony is perhaps one of the greatest things that deals and brings about change within any given system of magic. Crowley quoted that he didn't believe in hypnotism. What do you think ceremony is? I'm just saying. What do you think ceremony is? If you actually think about what a ceremony is, let's take it from out of an example, let's take modern day watered down piousness and dogma, such as the Protestants of, let's go with Judo Christian institutions such as apostolics. Apostolics work themselves up into such a frenzy. They're not having what occultists would refer to as a spiritual connection or a spiritual manifestation of an apparition. Okay, they're not having visions like monomancy and dream magic. You know, they're not having a deity talking to them like out of a burning bush or a big booming voice coming from the sky. No, they get into the ceremony, and much like that of a voodoo ceremony, they work themselves up into such a frenzy that they have what is known as an epileptic experience. Okay. Now, what do I mean by epileptic experience? This is where one person or maybe even a group of people suddenly just stop doing what everybody else does. Okay. And they tend to speak and move in odd ways. To an outside observer, this could be, oh my word, they've been possessed by a spirit. They could be possessed by a demon. But to the individual, they could be having some sort of hyper hysteria moment. I watched years ago, I watched a group of young ladies and young men get so heavily into the music that all of a sudden, one, two, maybe three of them started jumping up and down. Another two or three started screaming, hooting, and hollering. And next thing you know, everybody's running around the pews and then going down front, jumping up and down for joy, smacking each other, shaking hands, going back and forth, moving back and forth, and such. Now, if you've been to a voodoo ceremony, a loa takes possession of the body. This is a spiritual evocation. This is where the spirit of that loa goes into your body. Same thing with the orisha or a demon for that matter. The jinn can possess you. The devi, such as the fates or the furies, can infect you, go into you, and most importantly, work from within you. They can change you from inside out. This is a lot different from the watered down beliefs of, say, Wiccan, and pagan practices, where it's do whatever you want, but wait, do not harm someone because it will come back on you times three. Okay? Judo Christian institutions, these people claim to believe everything in the Bible, but yet they themselves don't follow anything from the Bible. Okay? You believe everything that's in the Bible, but yet you don't follow it. Okay? And this is the point. This individual brought in, Aleister Crowley. Okay? Number one, he clearly came out and said repeatedly he doesn't believe in the spiritual apparatus. Okay? The spiritual evocation, the spiritual ceremonial aspects of doing rites and rituals. Okay? Basically through hypnotism. Okay? Hypnotism is a way for you to relax. Okay? And allow another spirit to work through you. If you follow the works of, say, exorcism, for an example, what do you think an exorcism is? You're bringing forth that spirit to commune with that spirit and to tell it to go away. Okay, it is like a closing of the gate and a banishing rite from witchcraft. Okay, but yet most of the culture today, they don't even believe in this aspect. Crowley sure as hell didn't. He spoke in riddles, and he always shied away from the main questions, always changed the topic. Those who knew him and have written about him, such as, let's go with Christopher Hyatt, PhD, or Joseph, um, how should I, how do you pronounce his last name? It's Lizzie Whiskey, PhD, who were physicists, who were alchemists that supposedly did rights with this guy. And within a month, both of these guys lost their jobs. You see what I'm saying? If his works were so great, how come more than one person lost their job? How come more than one person was led down a desolate road? You know what I'm saying? So you really have to know what you're speaking on if you are going to even perform any form of sorcery or even spiritual evocation. You go back into the old grimoires, such as the Magus, deals with a circle. Now, Wiccans refer to it as a circle of protection. However, if you go into the grimoires, it is known as a circle of empowerment. Magi and sages used to lock themselves away for years so that they can master the arcane. It was always the master and the apprentice. They'd always go to a cemetery, a mausoleum, a graveyard, or even a funeral home, abandoned building of some form of mass cleansing. I mean, if you go to, say, for an example, one of the, and I know eh, this is a very sore spot for many people that probably are still alive today from World War II, but the the encampments where people were gassed and murdered. Okay, if you think about this, this would be a great place for a necromancer, a witch, or anybody who does spiritual summonings to go to conjure the dead. Okay, it is a great spiritual place to work. It would be like going to an abandoned church or, say, someplace that is known death, like a hospital. Okay, either way you look at it, a necromancer would go to one of these places. A warlock or a witch would go to these places. A witch doctor would go to one of these places. Okay. It doesn't matter what tradition of magic you're in. If you surround yourself with death and you become a medium or even a spokesperson for the spirits, evocation would be the best way to go, especially in the form of ceremonial magic. Okay. And like I said, the Masonic, the Masonry, the AA, the ATO, the OTO, all these groups revolve around geometric shapes. They deal with ceremonies. They are very sticklers for this type of ceremony. They would follow it to a T. And the best thing that I would recommend to people is if you get into any given system. Let's say, for an example, you're following the Grimoire Vernum. Okay, then you don't want to corrupt that by going into any other system, okay, and bringing this from here, that from there. No, you've already got the system in front of you. Do your homework, read it, take notes, find out how they do their rituals, and I can tell you that you will find success in evocation if you experiment within that system and give it an adequate amount of time. Okay, I've worked with the demonic Bible for a total of 5 years. Okay, and this was by Turk Suzij. Very, very good book based off the Thelema system. A lot of invocations and evocations through his book. Okay, if you go into, say, for an example, let's go with the Grand Grimoire, Red Dragon version. I found that to be more realistic than the Grand Grimoire itself. Okay, the Grand Grimoire, the Red Dragon, goes into a lot of details about ceremony, how to summon Lucifer's Raphael, having how to forge a rod of power. What do you think a rod of power is? A lot of people would say, okay, number one, you're threatening a demon, a spirit that is so powerful it would basically turn you into a toad, okay, or whatever, even kill you, even. But if you think about it, it is no different from a scepter, a staff, your athame, maybe even a skull, okay? It is a tool of power, a totem. It is a power totem, basically, that is infused with the current that you're working in. The very gnosis of ceremony, the circle, the time of day, the planetary figures, all of this plays into effect within a ceremonial ritual of evocation. If you go into some of these other places today, they're watered down, they're corrupted. And you'll know this because they burn out after a time. They either have an implosion or they simply just disappear from society. Some of them just die out and are too stubborn to just say, okay, I give up. But it's there. So you really have to do your own homework and realize, okay, magic is a lot harder than it looks. You'll grow more powerful and more wise the more you do it, but don't corrupt the system. You can go from the Grimorium Vernum to the Keys of Solomon, just not at the same time. You can even go into the Enochian magics, but not at the same time. That's all I got to say. Bastet Cobra, welcome to the channel. But that's what I got to say, and that's all I came on here to say. All right? Have a good night, and until next time. Agios Satanas.